Are there any plans to take Amulet into other mediums? I know, digital media like the Kindle, iBook, or the iPad
Yeah,
has.
we're actually Gordon, who is working from home today. He's actually here working on an Amulet app for the iPad. It's still not in a state where we can probably show it now or anything, but it's a lot. It's already a lot of fun. It's really cool. It's essentially it's an app where you can purchase the ebooks inside of it, but you guys will see it when it's ready to go. I'll let you know when it's ready, and then maybe you guys can feature it or something. But it's really cool. Like I can show you afterwards.
I know, a while back there was talk of a movie. Is there any plans at this point?
I'm actually not sure how much I can talk about that. But yes, there's actually solid plans in place currently, and things are rolling again. So in a pretty good way, actually, and I'm very involved this time. So it's good.
So what does a day in a life look like for
Day in the
Kazu?
life? It depends. Now, because of the baby dictates our days. So I get up at sunrise. So Junie gets up. Junie gets up at around 7, 8. Like if he sleeps in, he'll sleep in until like 8, and that's like sleeping in for me. And then these days, because we're in crunch time, I'm pretty much working every hour I possibly can. So I just come in. I'm in here in the morning. A lot of times if I'm doing like penciling, like inking, if I'm getting to ink, which is a really mechanical process, it's really easy to come in here in the morning and then just really get going. If I'm writing, I spend the morning maybe watching a movie or reading some part of a book or reading some comics or just looking at something just to get the juices flowing. And by the time the afternoon rolls around, I start really hammering out. I just start working out the ideas during the morning, and then I start laying out the stuff on the thumbnail sheets. And when I write and draw at the same time, so it looks like this. This is actually how I write these books. Don't get too close because there's some spoilers on this particular page. But yeah, and then when it's a little more detailed, it starts looking a little more like this, And then when I do that, I get through, I can get through a ton of pages a day if I'm on fire. I know what I'm doing. Most of the time I don't. I'm trying to find my way through. And then yeah, you'll see that I redraw a lot of stuff. Like in this case, I started this page and I just didn't like the way her gesture was, so I just redrew it here. I do a lot of, I cut a lot of stuff out. Like this stuff is not going to see the light of day now. It's not in the book anymore. Neither is this. This isn't in there anymore either. Or some of those panels are. And what I'll do is I'll cut out panels that actually work well. And then I just like tape them onto sheets of paper, and then I draw around those panels. And I just keep doing that. I just keep shuffling. It's like I'm reverse shuffling, like a deck of cards, until the whole thing is in order, And I think this is the process that I'm going to be sticking with for a while now. This is after 4 books. I've refined it to the point where I can quantify how much time it'll take to do the book, hopefully. But
so how long does the page usually take from thumbnail or beginning to the full colored page?
It's really hard.
It just depends.
Yeah, pin it down, because we could easily do a page in a day. It's like not difficult. The problem is all the unknowns. All the variables. When you're writing, sometimes it's like fishing. I have to wait until the proper solution finds me. Like a lot of times I'm not able to figure something out, and I'm just hitting my head against the wall, and I'm just thinking about it over and over and over again. I call it brain gymnastics when I come in here. I'm not usually just pacing back and forth in the office, and people just think I'm not doing anything, but I'm actually processing pretty much every story thread that's going through this and trying to figure out what the best solution is. I'm going and basically making as many mistakes as possible in my head and then putting it out here. That process is it's hard to measure. I can't tell you how long that takes, because sometimes it's probably a long time, but I don't know. But when I get it to this stage, and then I clean up the pencils, and then I ink it, and then we scan it into the computer and we paint it. It's actually pretty quick. Like getting the book done, like the production-wise, we can get it done pretty fast if we have to. Jason and I, at the end of the last production, at the very end of production, we were pushing 5 pages a day of fully painted pages, because we just had to. Each of us were doing that. We were doing 10 pages a day between the two of us. We may have to get to that point at some point in this production, but it's been pretty easygoing, relatively. So I don't think we'll have to go there. But yeah, it could be done in a few hours, if possible, if need be. But if I had to really if I did the math throughout the year, we're doing probably about a page a day.
Cool. To me, Copper, one of your books that you just recently had published, had influences, at least I saw. It was Little Nemo and Slumberland, Calvin and Hobbes, and Peanuts. I mean, I think I mentioned in one of my emails that it really brought back memories to when I used to read Peanuts at the library. What are some of your inspirations or influences for Amulet?
For Amulet, yeah, Amulet's the cinematic side of things for me. Like when I think of Copper, I did that as a love letter to those very same the comics that you're mentioning. I love those comics. I think eventually I'll retire to do those types of things. But there's a slightly more ambitious side of me that I always wanted to work in cinema. I just love films. Like I absolutely love films. Not necessarily love making films, because I actually did make films. It wasn't as fun as making comics when you have like all this control over it, and then you can just imagine stuff and make it happen. But yeah, with Amulet, I kind of feel like I'm just making movies. So movies are my biggest influences for this, and mostly live action films. In the case of Amulet 1, I like to think that was a mix of, like, if you took Spielberg's films and then you mixed it in with Miyazaki's films, and you did yeah, it's like a hybrid of those two things, like kind of the 80s fantasy stuff with a lot of Miyazaki's 80s to 90s fantasy stuff. That was probably the heaviest influences. And then there's some other influences like video games. Shadow of the Colossus has been, throughout the series, has been a pretty big influence. Just because of the sense of epic scale and wonderment and beauty that it exudes. I try to get a little bit of that in the books. In the new one, I've taken a lot of more contemporary influences. Just, I don't even want to spoil. It might even be a spoiler to just like mention all those influences, because they're more story. This is a much more story based, like a character portrait book, like where people are just talking throughout. But I think people will find that the talking is actually more riveting than the action in this book. But yeah, films that I think I thought about a lot when making this. Recently, while writing the second half of this book, I was watching The Sixth Sense. I was watching what else was I thinking about? Jeez, Inception. A lot of films that are meticulously crafted. Shutter Island. Just anything that actually Dexter, the TV show, has been a big influence because it's probably the most well-written thing I've seen in a long time. That show is so well-written. But yeah, it's things that are meticulously crafted. I feel like the fourth book is about that. It's about like control. It's about trying to control chaos. And how people do it in different ways. And so we're going to meet a villain who deals with that in very different ways than our hero does. And I think it's really engaging and really interesting subject matter for me. But yeah, I've been having a blast writing this book. It's just been really, really hard. I've never done anything where I am writing the final scenes before I write the first scene. It's the first time I've ever done that. So.
Your last book, I was really sucked in because of the cinematic quality of some of the scenes. What influenced your last book?
The third
movie-wise.
Movie-wise, oh man, I think the third book has the most the clearest references. I mean, I think we get a lot of flack for it being too much like Empire Strikes Back. I actually didn't think, I wasn't really thinking about Empire Strikes Back that much in the third one. I actually think the second one's a rip-off of the Empire Strikes Back, but no one seems to think about it that way. Story-wise, I feel the third book, third and second books are a lot more like westerns. You know, I actually thought about westerns a lot. You know, when they travel to these landscapes, I think of them as like they're like the desert landscapes in a good John Ford western. You know, you got the Monument Valley, but I'm just making a fantastic version of all that stuff. And even samurai films. You know, I think of those things. Samurai films being essentially westerns. Yeah, the influences in the third one. Obviously, the Star Wars series is in there, and there's very clear homage, tributes paid to Miyazaki's stuff in that one. In fact, the third book, because like it was a waypoint between books, I actually saw it as I likened it to being in a very enjoyable plane ride, and I'm just looking out the window, or like a train ride, and I'm just looking out the window at all the beautiful pictures that might pass by, and I tried to run a narrative through it that was satisfying, but moving through the spaces that you travel through in the third book was probably to me more important than a lot of the narrative stuff that happens in the book, and it's the opposite in the fourth book. All the plot machinations are going to take front and center, though I feel like the locations are going to be pretty. I think we're going to. I think it's the best looking book in the series, but yeah, the story really took front and center on this one. But yeah, the third one, just everything I loved.